I pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anybody want to do the opening invocation? Okay, we skip it.
Amen.
All right, so tonight, there's four of us here.
Full house.
Is there anybody online?
Not at the moment.
Okay, we'll keep it going for a little bit.
I'll tell that Yahoo.
But you guys might as well move up close because we're going to go through the MFD of G1000 tonight and give you a basic understanding of essentially what it's going to take to be an observer, to sit in the right seat. But of course, you guys are pilots, so this will be helpful for you too. Just I guess for posterity, whoever watches this back, if they do, we'll talk about some business items first off. Cat 437 the engine has been taken out of the airplane and sent to the engine shop. I don't know if it's gotten there yet, but we're supposed to get it back in 6 weeks. So I don't know if it's still in transit, but from the time it's sent out to the time it's back in 6 weeks, there'll be a protocol for flying the airplane for a period after that. Which begs the question, okay, well, you've got to fly it at certain tower settings, which we're going to have to.
Mineral oil too, right?
Mineral oil, there's going to be a whole protocol. It really doesn't lend itself to A, flight training, or B, Form 5 evaluation, or getting checked out in the airplane. So some of the good news that happened this week that we found out, instead of the original plan was that 498 would be traveling back south to Gillespie Field the moment 437 was out of the shop. 437 will be here now, and also 498 indefinitely. So we're going to have Zelda here indefinitely. The reason why is because Group 8 is getting a Turbo 182 out of Texas. This aircraft was originally supposed to be assigned to the Hawaii wing, and I guess for whatever reason, they're not ready to accept it, whatever, so it's going to go to Group 8. So Group 8 won't be needing Zelda back, so we're going to keep it here, and it'll probably be at Riverside, to be honest with you. So we'll probably have two 206s here at Riverside for most of the year. This is going to be great because you guys will be able to get your initial Form 5 without any delay, okay? And while 437 is being broken in, you can't really take a Form 5 in it. You'll have something to fly. That's that. On the board back there, there is the printouts of CAP pilot requirements. If you wanted to take, if anybody wanted to take a copy, you could take it. I've sent it out so you have it electronically. But there's the roadmap. We've talked about it pretty much extensively over the past few weeks, the roadmap on how to become one of the several different types of CAP pilots that we have on here. Let's see. So Mike Swift was supposed to have had a program here tonight, and he wasn't feeling well, so he went home. So I guess I'm just going to go into this as prepared as, I guess I fly the G1000s. All right, so let's talk about this. So you have the primary flight display on the pilot side, the multifunction display on the observer side. Right now I have called up the multifunction display. Let's just go through all of the buttons on here before we start showing you how they work. Okay, starting at the top you have your nav 1 and your nav 2, okay? And you have, right now, this box right here is the, hold on a second.
Is that the one you paid for through Garmin?
What's that?
Is that the one you paid for through Garmin?
This was actually already on the screen, so you have a standby and the active frequency here, okay? For nav 1 and nav 2. So standby and active. Over here you've got your comm, You've got your standby and your active frequencies, okay?
And how do you
Now-
switch between the two?
So to switch between the two, okay, there is this transfer switch right here.
Oh, the arrow, back and forth?
You see this button that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pushing over here?
Yeah.
So I want my frequency to be 108, there I just transferred it into the active frequency, okay?
Gotcha. And then we go to nav 2 if you wanted to, you,
Now to go to nav 2, I'm gonna punch this button here.
oh, okay. Same on the other side.
So this is the frequency selector, by the way, okay? Can you see the arrow if I do it this way, or do you need me to point with the pointer?
No,
The point with the pointer?
No, I see it.
Oh, this is fine. Okay, so let's just do it this way. So right here, you've got the volume control, okay? The volume control works for the frequency that's selected. Right now it's nav 1. If I moved it down to nav 2, it'd work for that volume, okay? So here's toggling back and forth between nav 1 and 2, okay? And here's transferring the standby frequency to the active frequency. Make sense?
Yep.
So if I go over here to COM, it's the same way. Okay, toggling between COM 1 and 2, and then transferring between the standby and the active frequency. Here's the volume adjusts whichever one's been activated. Right now it's a COM 1, if I move it down here, it's COM 2. If you push this button, it's the squelch, okay? All right, so let's select a frequency. The small knob, you can see that what it's doing, and this is in general terms what I say for G1000, the small knobs does small things, and the larger knobs do larger things, okay? So right now, if I wanted to go to, let's say, 121.0, well, first I have to go to the COM frequency here. 120, I'm gonna go over here to 121.0 for tower. So the big knob I'm doing for the big changes of the one before, the frequency, and then the dot part afterwards, I use the small knob, okay? And now I'll transfer that into the active. Does this make sense? Small knob, big knob, okay? Okay, so we talked about how to use the frequency transfer, how to use the volume, and how to dial in a frequency here. CRS and Barrow, okay, over here. This is all going to be, well, Barrow is going to be for your Colesman's window, okay? This is duplicate buttonology on the MFD as it is on the PFD. We're going to skip this for the mission observer's sake, since you guys won't be using the Omniberry selector and blah, blah, blah. Coming down to the range button on the right-hand side. First of all, I'm going to say, before I get there, you see this clear button? Right here I have a flight plan that's up. If you hit clear in any screen, it'll take you right back to basically 0. Okay, so say you got yourself into a cabinet that you weren't sure of, okay. You hit clear and you're right back to the map. Okay, that's a really important function to understand. But going back to the range button here, okay, you see our aircraft is on the moving map here. If I punch the range button, there's a couple of things that happen. It tells me what the MSL is below me. It also tells me the lat and long that the aircraft is positioned. Okay, very useful in search. So when you're driving along and you see something as an observer, you immediately want to hit the range button. It'll capture a lat long, okay? Now, I, as a pilot, use this elevation all the time because I'm supposed to fly 1,000 feet AGL. Well, when you're in an alluvial fan, let's just say, it's gradual rising terrain, you want to keep that 1,000 feet. One way is just continue over your 2,700 feet and 1,700 feet below you. Just keep hitting this and you can increase your true altitude, your MSL, okay, so that you maintain that AGL below you. So this range button here, you click it again and it disappears, okay? I'm going to come back to that and give you a procedure here in a minute called read, but we'll just continue on down the device here and show you the buttons. Here you have the direct to button, okay? That's part of a flight planning. We'll get out of that. Here's menu that you can use to set up your map. Most of the stuff you're not going to be fussing with, okay? The pilot's going to have the map set up the way that he wants it. But let's just say that you wanted to go in here. Here's the different things. Like, for an example, right now it's north up, okay? There's some other things that you can do in here, including you can change it to true headings instead of magnetic headings on the HSI. Now, why would you do that? One reason you might do that is because when we're flying search grids, we fly true headings. So we take our magnetic heading and we subtract the magnetic variance to get the true heading of, let's say, south. So south is 180, right? Magnetic. But true, it might be 168 because there's a 12 degrees least, right? Magnetic heading. So we want to fly straight, true north and south to stay on our grid, because those are grid lines, right? That'll really screw you up if you get in the airplane and you think that your HSI is showing magnetic, because you fly magnetic in every other aspect of aviation and it's set to true, right? There is a call out on there. There's some nomenclature when that's the case. So just as a matter of, make sure that you're looking for something. If you see something on the HSI that says something like TRUE, or I don't know what the nomenclature says, but okay, give you a heads up that that could be changed. It'll be in a little call box there. But anyway, I digress. Let's see what it is, by the way. Let's see if I can. It's actually a different screen. Let me go over to that. I'm just curious now. If we go over to auxiliary is where you can change that. And let me see here. Calgary. Airspeed. No. It's not being that page. Alright, I'm not gonna mess with that. I can't find it. Alright. Going down here, so you got the direct, you got menu, which creates different options for the display. Flight plan. When you press flight plan, here's where you can enter a flight plan, okay? We'll get back to that in a second. Clear, like I said, is your get out of jail button. Get out of jail free card. Procedure is used for approaches, okay? And then enter is what you think it is the enter button, okay? Down here is the flight management system control knob. Again, the little button here does little things, large button, large knob does large things. So let's just go ahead and turn the large knob here. And you can see that I call these there's file cabinets in the G1000. You've got map, waypoint. These are the different filing cabinets. All right. I'll just describe them. But you can see the list is at the bottom, okay? Map, waypoint, aux, flight plan, checklist, and nearest, okay? So with the large file cabinet knob, I can select the different file cabinets. Here's waypoint file cabinet, the trip planning file cabinet, or auxiliary, excuse me, the flight plan, the checklist, and then the nearest, okay? These are all the filing cabinets. Now, there's drawers in every filing cabinet. Here's a navigation map drawer, the traffic map, the storm scope, the weather data link, and TAWS, which is terrain awareness. So those are all the drawers in that file cabinet. Go over to here, waypoint, you can see there's airport information, intersection information, NDB, VOR, and user waypoints. All the different waypoints that you can have. The one that's going to be relevant, most relevant for the observer is going to be user waypoints to define a grid, beginning of a grid. We come over here to auxiliary. This is where I was trying to get to before. Let's see if I can see it here. These are all the different file cabinets, including the GPS signal that you're getting, and whether or not you have. How many of these satellites do you need to have to get a GPS position accurately? 3, 5? 4 is what I've been told. Okay, see the nav angle over here, magnetic? This is where you can change it to true. Okay, again, let's actually go ahead and do it. See, well, never mind. Later. I don't want to get too far off track. We actually have XM radio in here that's noise attenuated. I don't know if the subscription is up now, but normally, sometimes it is or is it, I don't know. It's nice to be flying along, you can listen to, I don't know, Fox News. System status page. Okay, here's your flight plan, here's your catalog of flight plans, and here's your active flight plan. The checklist, talk about that, and then all the nearest, your nearest airports, intersections, NDB, VOR, etc. All right, so remember I said the clear button, that gets your get out of jail free card. So now, that's what those buttons are there for. You can see down here, there's something called soft keys. Generally, there's probably 4 or 5 different ways to do the same thing in G1000. It all depends on kind of the way that you want to do it. You can look down here and see map. You can turn topo on or off, terrain on or off, CAP regulation to fly with terrain on, put the airways on or off, storm scope, you can overlay that, you can overlay your next rad, which is your radar, all these different things here. Go back. This declutter here just takes stuff off the map, okay? The number one reason why you could probably fly in airspace on a G1000 is because somebody's decluttered the map for you. So check out the map right there, and is showing the class, probably a Bravo airspace right there, or Delta. And boop, I've just taken it off there if I decluttered it, okay? So. All right. Over here, you've got the engine instruments, manifold pressure, and the RPM, okay? Because it's a high performance constant speed prop, that's going to be 2 different values, right? You have your fuel flow. Okay, which because these are fuel injected engines for G1000, you just set the aircraft to a fuel flow, and then you would lean from there at altitude. We'll talk more about that later. Visual on oil pressure, oil temperature, cylinder head temperature, exhaust gas temperature. Here's your fuel quantities, left and right. And you've got your electrical system. You've got your main bus and your electrical bus, or your, excuse me, your main bus and your essentials bus. What is the difference between the two? Okay, this is your regular battery here, and this is your standby battery. Okay, showing the volts that each is being put out, and how many amps the standby battery has and your main battery has. Okay. Pretty much, if you lose your main electrical bus, you have 45 minutes to land. That's about how much battery you have on a standby battery. And by the way, it's really important when you go through your pilot training to understand what systems you have on the essentials bus or the standby bus, which isn't many. You've got your ARs, altitude heading reference system, your air data computer, your GPS 1, not your GPS 2, your COM 1, your NAV 1, your primary flight display, and you've got your instrument lights. There's a lot of things that you don't have. You don't have a transponder, right? You don't have flaps on your standby bus. Okay? So, you don't have landing light
Do you know?
on that.
Do you know if on the cylinder head and exhaust gas, is that off of one cylinder or is it? Can you
It's a
select
peak
them?
cylinder, yeah.
Okay.
So when you lean to EGT, and this is a whole other discussion, you're leaning to an exhaust gas temperature. Your cylinder head temperature has nothing to do with your leaning. It's just what the cylinder head temperatures are within each cylinder. But you'll lean to an exhaust gas temperature. We'll go into that with your pilot training. All right, so over here then, in this final quadrant here of the display, you have your GFC 700 autopilot. Okay? You've got autopilot on or off. Okay? The flight director. You guys know what a flight director is and what the difference between an autopilot and a flight director is? Okay. Huh? You don't have autopilot? Okay.
Here's my autopilot.
No, no, here's the other.
The flight director takes the information from the GPS, and that is what's flying the airplane when you're slave to the GPS. Okay, the flight director. Okay. Autopilot, when you turn the autopilot on, it goes into something called roll mode, which means whatever it's flying at right now, it's just going to continue to fly. If you're at about a 5-degree nose high climb and a 5-degree left roll, you push autopilot, that's what you're going to be in. Okay. When you turn the autopilot on, the flight director automatically comes on, and it's waiting for information to come over from the GPS. It won't do anything until you press nav. And when you press nav, now the nav is feeding the flight director, and the flight director is flying the autopilot. Okay? So anyway, you've got autopilot, heading bug, okay? You see this right here? That's the heading bug for your primary flight display. Before you ever put the autopilot on, you want to punch this button right here, and that centers the heading bug. You'll make this mistake more than once where you put the autopilot on and then you immediately press heading. Now it's flying heading, but you know what? You forgot to center the heading bug, so now you're flying in a turn. Okay, so you can fly the autopilot using heading, nav. You can hold your altitude, or you can select an altitude and then fly to it with a vertical speed or flight level change. In general terms, we use flight level change in climbs, climbing to an altitude, and we use vertical speed in a descending, because when you get into flying, especially instruments, they want 1,000 feet per minute descent. Well, you can just dial in your descent right there with your vertical speed. This sounds like it's complicated to use. This is so easy to use. This is like such a wonderful device right here. Okay.
Interesting note. I was watching a video about IFR usage and this type of stuff, and the times where you're hand flying in IFR. takeoff, landing typically. What was interesting, they were talking about using the flight director decoupled from the servos, meaning no autopilot. The flight director will give you the pink bars. Will give you, if you're gonna be in the soup, like immediately from takeoff, it gives you your course, like if you've loaded your procedures and everything like that, you'll get the carrots to guide you around, but you're still hand flying the plane, so you have the.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the autopilot just takes the information from the
Yeah.
flight director and flies it, or you can have flight director on and nav,
Yeah,
and you're flying
and
it.
it
Okay, you
shows
have to
you.
just fly to the carrot, like what you're talking about there. That's what a lot of people do, use flight director and instruments, and why wouldn't you? You know, you punch it on there, you have your nav course set up, you have all your stuff in your procedure in there, you hit flight director, autopilot's not on, you hit flight director, and the flight director's doing the same thing telling you to do as it would tell the autopilot to do, except that you're the guy that's gotta be keeping those carrots centered up, like what you're talking about. All right, so there's the overview of the MFD. Let's talk about, in practical terms, what an observer is going to do. Okay, you're going to be required to, you have your own, in our airplanes, you have a multiple intercom. There's one intercom for the pilot, there's one intercom for the observer. What does that mean? Well, what it means is I can be listening to ground, okay, on my side of things when I select that, but over here, you might have another frequency selected over here, okay? That you're not listening, you know, unless you have that frequency selected on your side of things, you're not hearing anything. Does that make sense? It's like your own independent system over here. Anyway, you're probably not gonna, you're really gonna be dealing a lot with the CAP radio, okay? But you need to know how to turn this on. Let's talk about this range, enter, direct enter. Okay, so one thing that you definitely need to know as an observer is how to mark a spot when you fly over it, okay? Like I said, you reach out, you hit this range. Now, you've got a lat long. You'd say mark, and then you'd say to the scanner, I'm gonna give you a lat long.
Okay.
Just punch that button, that range button.
Good, good.
So you tell the scanner at 39.00 decimal, or 39 degrees, 0 minutes, decimal 0. We fly decimal everything. We don't fly degrees, minutes, and seconds. It's decimal minutes, okay? That's another big screw up in the menu portion of things. CAP is always degrees, minutes, decimal minutes. All right, and then you just give the lat long. We had them write it down, recite it back to you, you're square on that. Now you can go to the next step in the procedure. Okay? Once you've hit the range button, you hit enter again. It says user waypoint. Do you want to name it that? Okay, so you can just use the default name, whatever it is. Okay? And hit enter again. Direct, enter. Now, has created a flight plan back to that point. Which, because we're over it, it's straight down. If you're flying around, okay, that line is going to create a flight plan back to that point, okay? So, why is that important? Well, then let's say you can delete this flight plan by going direct, menu, enter. So now there's no flight plan in there. Clear, get you out of jail. Okay, so the procedure is range, enter. So it's named their waypoint, direct, enter, let's see, activate, enter. Now it's created a flight plan to that. On the PFD side of things, I'll show you over here what I would do, is then I go over to the PFD, and I go to bearing 1, and I'll just turn it on and up, and I go to GPS, and this bearing pointer is going to take me directly back to that spot as I'm flying by. multiple times. I can just use that bearing pointer to find that. When you're flying search in the mountains, you're flying, let's say, east to west, okay? Say that the sun is coming from the west at that time, it's late in the day. When you turn it around, okay, you saw it this way, or you saw it the other way. The lighting's completely different when you're coming back the other way, right? Makes sense? Different shadows. It's really, really difficult to get back over that spot if you didn't have a lat. Even if you had a lat long, you're going back to it on the here. Without a flight plan to it, it's really, really difficult. So this is something that you would brief with your mission pilot so that you would agree that this would be the procedure. The reason I'm saying that is because there are times when a mission pilot is using autopilot in search. Now, if you're using autopilot in search, right, and you have a plan set up here, and then you go change this flight plan, all of a sudden, okay, that changes things. So, anyway. All right, so range is called READY, that's the procedure right there. Let's go create a flight plan. Probably the easiest way to create a flight plan is direct to, right? Direct to something. I've just now lit up this area where I can put in a flight plan. If I take the small knob and I rotate it back, it gives me some options to get to places quicker. Okay? It says, did you want to enter a flight plan? You can click to the right and say, did you want to go to a nearest? Or did you want to go to a recent? This is really valuable when you're just, and this function works in direct to or flight plan. Once you bring up this cursor, I'll get out of it again. Once you bring up that cursor and you turn this little knob backwards, and now you turn it backwards once and then to the right twice, here's going to be Riverside, Hemet, Riv, all these things you don't have to actually dial in now. You just scroll down. And then hit enter. And you're going right there. It says activate to it, right? Okay? So that's one way to do that. The other way is just the conventional way. You hit right here, and now K comes up, because it thinks you want to go to an airport. If you don't want to go to an airport, you want to go to, let's say, Ogueco or Guco, you just, again, use the little knob to change the letter in that station, and then the big knob to change the location. And then go back to the little knob, and then the big knob, and so on, and then press enter at the end, now because that's not a real waypoint. So let me go back and just dial in something that's real, K route, right? So we'll go K, we'll change the station with the big knob, we'll go R, and it's way easier to do this in the airplane than it is with a mouse. I've got K-Route in there, that's where I want to go. Hit enter, and then it says, well, now do I want to activate it? Yes, I do. So now I've got a direct flight plan to K-Route. Now, I want to delete that flight plan. I go direct, menu, enter. So direct. Now I go back because I have a recent of K-Route in there. I can go left and right 2 times, and K-Route's right there. I scroll down once, I hit enter. It says activate. I've got a flight plan. I want to get out of it. I go direct, menu, enter. Done. Now another way to do a flight plan is multiple legs.
So if you have autopilot on, and you hit that, for instance, you hit direct to menu and it deletes it, will that autopilot still fly the heading and altitude that you're currently on?
If you had it on nav, it's going to disconnect the autopilot. Yeah. If you change and import,
It won't just put it into like heading and. Or
no, it's going to disconnect. If you change,
a volt or something.
yeah, it'll disconnect the autopilot altogether. If you change the source at any time when the autopilot is on, let's see, how's that? It's gonna disconnect the autopilot.
Keep the hands off. Okay.
Yeah, if you
Just
if
start-
you disconnect
just-
nav. Now, you can change from heading to nav, that's not going to disconnect it. But if you change, like, normally the way that you, this is a good question. Because what's definitely gonna disconnect it is changing this CDI, okay? You see that right there?
Mhm.
That, anytime you change that, and it's gonna disconnect the autopilot. I've gotta think about that. It may not disconnect the autopilot if you do that.
Such direct menu.
This is one of those things where it's like, what's the guy's phone number? I'm like, I don't know, but I can take the phone and dial it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. I'm pretty sure it disconnects the autopilot if you delete the flight plan out of there. I'll try that. Okay, so flight plan,
Next time.
here we go, we just light up the cursor again, okay? If you wanna go to this easy button, back one, and then right two. Okay, and then I'm gonna say I wanna go to K-Rib. Honestly, if you can be proficient with this part of God damn, it's so close to the knob there. If you can be proficient with this, it's about all you need to be VFR checked out in a G1000. To be able to create a flight plan. Obviously, know how to lean the aircraft, the other instruments. So you've got a flight plan in there now, right? If you want to add a leg here, you highlight the leg that you want to replace. So I'm going to put in there something else.
F-70.
Okay, I could do that. Ah. How many people we have online there? We lose them?
We have 5.
Hey!
Okay, so we've got K-Rail to F-70, there you go, okay? Now, you want to activate a certain leg. Hold on. Yeah. So you can see the leg from F-70 Riverside's activated, but we don't want that one. We want to, God damn it. That's not the button. Even I'm having trouble right now remembering this. There should be an activate leg right here. No, I'm gonna have to go back and brush up on that myself. You can tell, I mean, I have not flown a G1000 now in a year, okay? But I flew it for 16 years. So, let me tell you, this stuff, if you don't use it, you lose it, big time. There's, I don't know, 144 buttons on here and about 6 different ways to Sunday to use them all.
Is
So,
the,
you know.
is our simulator, like, is it stay up to date, or is it something I need to take on,
What is that now?
our simulator? Like, how does it stay updated with the newest G1000?
That, you know what, I don't know if it's, I have no idea. That's a Mike Swift question. But anyway, here's our flight plan. Okay, so you can go in here, if you wanted to clear out one of the legs, you could do that, remove it. Now you go back up to, everything gets going with the cursors going, remember? So get the cursor going by punching this knob, if I didn't say that before. And then the big knob does big things, small knob does small things. So we talked about how to do a user waypoint from while you're flying. Just punch this button right here, range, enter, enters, and use a waypoint, okay? But you're gonna need to, as a observer, be able to create a user waypoint that defines a corner of a grid, okay? So that's where you're gonna need to go to this file cabinet right here. Waypoint, okay? User waypoint, okay? Light it up, okay? Name it. I'm gonna name it 1. Well, okay, we'll name it 1H, what the hell, okay? Do I want to create a new user waypoint? I said yes, enter yes. What kind of a waypoint is it going to be? Is it going to be a radial and a distance from a VOR? That's what that's asking you. Or is it going to be a lat long? So here's the different ones, okay? Radial over radial, an intersection, radial and a distance, or lat long. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say it's going to be lat long. Here's where you get into some really serious knob digging, okay? Now, you're the observer, and you're in run-up right here, and I'm waiting on you to do this proficiently, okay? To put this into play. So, again, big knob, big changes, little knob, little changes. I'm in north already, okay? See, I just screwed it up myself. Okay. Little knob. Now, we don't want to change that, do we, from north? So we move to the different station. I want to go to 3730, let's say. I'll just say 37 just to make it easier, okay? Scroll with the big knob all the way down to west. Let's go to, let's say 97. Okay? Now, what do I do? Enter. So 1H, there's your waypoint, there's your corner of a grid, direct, enter, enter. You got a flight plan to your waypoint. Okay, so now you go back to movie map and you see where the flight plan is. That's
Do we have flight stream in our airplanes? Like loading from ForeFlight?
the newer ones, yes, they do. It's kind of interesting. So let's go back here. I'm going to show you something even more advanced than that. But that's where you're going to go in and you're going to put in your user waypoint to define. You only need one corner of a grid, and I'll tell you why. You need the northwest corner of the grid. This is the one that I normally go to first, okay? And then I drive everything off of that. So I'm going to come back in here in the flight plan, okay? I've got a direct to here. I'm going to go search and rescue, okay? My initial waypoint is this, what I call it, 1H.
Mhm. Andre, I forgot you were even over there because I can't see you. Enter.
Do I want a parallel track search? Okay, yes. My initial track, I'll say that I want it to be south. My initial turn is going to be left is good. Left is good. 15 length. Normally we're flying quarter grids, but this is a full grid, is 15 miles, okay. And then I'll say activate SAR, come down here. And enter. So let's see where this waypoint is. I have no idea where on Earth we are here. So if you go to the range button here, you can back out, turn it in, you go closer, and roll it out further away. Let's see how far away we are. That's not that far. So when you highlight this cursor here, you can move your cursor down the screen. Okay, roll back in. Oh, let's go roll back in. Can you see the search pattern there?
Yeah, those keys are always easier in the screen.
Way better.
Not many done.
Anyway, you guys get the idea here.
Is SAR a feature of all Garmin's, or is it loaded specially for ours?
I think it's just loaded specially. We have that. It's not a thing.
Yeah, because I was sitting there, I'm like, I've played with the G1000 but I've never seen SAR menu. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah. So what questions do you guys have on any of this? Seem pretty straightforward. Now that you have some of the basics, I'd invite you to go, if you know the code, we won't broadcast it here, but there is a code. I'll tell you what it is when we turn the camera off to get into the building, okay? Come here anytime you want and turn the simulator on and practice entering in the flight plans and based on what you've seen here. Was this helpful at all?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not the world's best teacher, I gotta be honest with you, so. Anyway, is there anything else for tonight? That's kind of the basics. We can go into a lot more. There's so much more for the G1000. Well, since we have 10 minutes, why not? Let's just talk about the PFD side of things. Why not? You guys are all pilots. Okay. Let me see if I can get us flying here. Let's see. Okay, I guess that seems like a little high, 30,000 feet. Now, and let's go 100 and let's say 100 knots is fine. Okay. And we'll go to waypoint of shit, doesn't matter at all. Let's just go here. Okay, so now we're flying at 5,000 feet, okay? Here's my altitude alerter right here. I can put it on 5,000 feet. Again, the outside knob does the big stuff, and the little knob does the little stuff here. So let's just go to 5,000 feet. Let's go ahead and center up our heading bug. Well, I can turn the heading bug to the right here. I'll push this button and center it. put the autopilot on. See, it goes right into roll mode, autopilot, pitch. And let's go ahead and nav. I guess I don't have a flight plan in. So this little window here is the same as kind of the big window over there on the MFD side of things. I'll come back up here and go direct enter. Now I've got a flight plan. I can go nav. GPS says this, okay? Now we're flying the airplane, okay? So let's just say that, what was your question if we disconnect, if we delete the flight plan, if we'll disconnect the autopilot?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let's find out.
There you go. Would be there against the menu.
See, the autopilot's disconnected, that's what I thought. Now, we'll go back here and go direct, enter, enter, flight plan again. Now I've got to reactivate the nav here. Okay, now we're flying again, okay? Same is true here. If you change anything on the CDI, you're going to disconnect the autopilot, because right now it's on GPS. Now I change it to VOR, it's just going to disconnect the autopilot. It's going to make you fly the airplane. Let's go back to GPS. Let's go to nav. Okay. All right, so we're flying to this waypoint, whatever it is, 51 kilo. And let's just say that we want to go up to 6,000 feet. So I've changed the altitude alerter in here. I should. We started out at 5,000 feet, right? So I have it stuck at 5,000 feet. I just said autopilot, hold it at 5,000 feet. Okay. GPS is flying me to the waypoint, but now I want to climb to 6,000 feet. So I'm going to go flight level change. Okay, and when I do that, why isn't it working?
I think it disconnected the autopilot.
No.
There you go.
I'm not hitting the button. Is anyway. I'll show you how to. Okay, this we never for whatever reason the mouse isn't clicking the FLC. Okay, you can see here that you can do nose up or down, and now it's going to climb at that rate of speed to 6,000 feet. Okay. We never use it on a climb. Why this flight level change button isn't connecting here? Anyway. All right. When it gets to 6,000 feet, the autopilot will hold it right there. We can, in the meantime, change it to a lower altitude, and you'll see that at 5,300 it'll lock in. See the green here indicates. Now, let's say that we wanted to go to a descent. Now it's going to stay at 5,300. Now I changed my altitude alerter down to 4,300. It's not going to change that. Its altitude's captured at 5,300. Now when I go VS, it will change. I'm going to say I want to go 1,000 feet a minute down. That tone means you're within 1,000 feet of your altitude alerter, okay? So now it's going to go down this way. I can change autopilot to heading right now, and now it's going to start turning right because my heading bug isn't centered, remember that? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and punch that so it'll come up here. I can say, you know what, I don't want to, I get a call from ATC, it says, you were cleared to 4,300, but maintain 4,900. You hit altitude right there, it's going to stick right there. And not go down to your alerted 4,300. And then it says resume on nav, okay. Put your VS on and go down to your 4,300. So the flight director right here. If I turn flight director off, can't turn flight director off. When you turn autopilot off, it turns off flight director. The autopilot just turned off, okay? Actually, the flight director's still on. What am I talking about? Let's do this nav thing here, okay? So the autopilot is off now, so the airplane's flying along manually. But this flight director is going to continue to tell you, because it's hooked up. The flight director is on the GPS here. I can turn it off here. Now it isn't. Now the flight director is just in roll mode. It'll keep you right there at that pitch. But if I say I want to do, let's just say, let's change the heading bug here so you can see it happen. Let's go flight director and heading mode. You'll see that this is going to start turning you to the right. Now these your inside carrots aren't going to turn because nobody's flying the airplane right now. There's a ghost at the control. But all you would do then is turn the airplane and keep this seated inside that flight director. So it's going to take you. Now if I put the autopilot on, it's just going to do it automatically for us. So now it's flying that way. So here's your course knob when you change it to OBS down here. Your barrel selector, you see I'm changing the altimeter right there. Setting. This is where you kind of get in trouble with Zelda because you have one big knob that does 4 different things. And so you've got to select the thing that you want it to do first. So you end up changing, let's say, your barometer setting when you wanted to change your heading. That's a lot of negative transfer from the G1000 going over to G500 on that. But, you know, you've got your airspeed, attitude, altitude, okay, your HSI right here. Really is, once you get used to the airspeed tape, it's really, I mean, it doesn't take long. Maybe 1 or 2 flights you should be able to get used to it. Too low, go low. Too high, go high, right? Airspeed's too low, go low. Airspeed's too high, go high. That's how I've always thought about it. Same with the tape. So, any questions? Of course, you got your 30, 45, and 60 here. This particular simulator does have the new, trying to think what that's called.
Synthetic vision.
Well, synthetic vision, but also along with that it comes the ESP. It basically will not let you stall the airplane when it's on. Won't let you turn past like a 30-degree bank. Anyway, it's 8 o'clock. That's it. If nobody has any other questions, we'll just call it a night. Is that off?
Yeah.
So,
It's off now.